مولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. When we look at the current society that we live in the current times, we have to admit that things have much different than maybe we'll say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. In the way that the amount of things that we are consuming, the amount of distractions that we have are in a way incomparable to what existed, for example, 50 years ago. Just looking through some of the statistics from the LA Times, for example, and some of these statistics you might be shocked. It says that the average American home owns 300,000 items. The average American home owns 300,000 items. That the average size of an American home has nearly tripled in the last 50 years, the size. Now I was always wondering, I went through some of the neighbors and I was wondering, we have neighbors and they have garages, two-door garages, but I see everyone parking outside. For me, that was always interesting. Why, when you have a garage, I was in another country 20 years and everyone loves to put the car in the parking and in the garage. I was wondering why when I came back here and I was looking at the statistic, it says, well, 25% of people with two-car garages don't have room to park cars because all the stuff that they bought is in the garages. And about 32% of them only have room for one vehicle. So this is a problem. Or we have British researchers, even in England. It says the average 10-year-old has 238 toys and only plays with just 12. So we are living in a time period where there's excessive abundance. They made it very easy to purchase things. And we have been targets. We have been targeted by these large companies to make sure we buy their products. And now it's very easy. Whenever you want it, after you order, nighttime it comes. Ding dong will come. Some people, unfortunately, they're so used to this service that if that Amazon delivery person doesn't come that day, they get sad. Because every day he has to come and deliver something. What's wrong with him? How come he didn't come today? So this goes back to our topic that we discussed last week about negligence, being unmindful and forgetting. Because we are surrounded by distractions, surrounded by things that cause us to lose focus is why we're created. And we keep trying and harder. We think that having a good life means having lots of things. Just like that child that has 238 toys, for example, a 10-year-old or 8-year-old. He sees 10-year-old. It says we are in the same way that we don't really need all this stuff. And how sometimes when we go back to the old time period, you see how simple people lived and how comfortable they were and how easy life was. That we just created for ourselves confusion and distractions. But the topic of tonight is how can I stay mindful? How can I stay mutadhakkir in the remembrance of God hereafter, of myself, in such a time period? In such a time period. Because we're surrounded now. I talked a little bit about last week about social media. And not only that is, purchasing things, but the phone and devices that we have that are all around us and hours we spend. Some of it is good, but a lot of it, if you admit, takes away from the important things. It doesn't have much barakat in it. Does not have much blessings in it. We do not say you have to do away with it. No, we have to learn how Shahid Mutahari mentions about active taqwa. You can't just put yourself in a way, I'm going to close, disconnect, for example, my internet service, to not have anything whatsoever and just live in a bubble. You cannot live like that. That is actually passive taqwa. And even if you do it and you stay away from sin, he says this is not active taqwa. This is passive taqwa. This is the piety that a person has that hides himself, puts himself in a corner. And we see the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam never did this. That they lived in the most important cities, from Medina sometimes, for example. Sometimes they're forced in Baghdad. You see those capitals, the most important cities, not in a corner where they would keep their piety, in a way they wouldn't see any haram. They only see, for example, followers of Ali Muhammad. No. They were engaged in society, but also had their piety. Meaning that they had active taqwa. They had piety that meant that wherever they go, that piety followed them. And that is what we're instructed to have. That same level of piety you have right now in the masjid, that you should have in social media, when it comes to purchasing. All of this should go in, have one intention, and that is for God. At the end, yes, buy gifts for others, buy gifts for your kids, but is it really for God? So tonight's discussion is how can we stay mutadhakkir? How can we pay attention? Last week, we talked about paying attention to ourselves. Sometimes we forget who we even are, what we are doing, what potential did God create for us, and what maqam and position can we have if we're a true Muslim. We forget about that. We forget about insan. Today, I want to talk about the factors of ghafla, the factors of negligence. We said there's ghafla, which is, in a way, you can say someone that is unmindful, and we compared it to driving. Some people, they drive in a way they're not mindful, they're not paying attention to the road. They get in accidents, they're not keeping their eyes, they're talking on the phone, they're talking to their friend, and they get in an accident. That is called ghafla. And usually if you have a bad track record, DMV will write you a nice letter and say, you are a negligent driver. And your insurance goes way up. So that is one definition that we say of ghafla. Means not paying attention. What am I doing? In the same way, people in this world, they're driving like a maniac. They're living life like a maniac. There's so many dangers. There's so many cliffs. So many ways that we could crash. We don't pay attention. We don't pay attention, you're negligent. We said there's a driver that has nisyan, that forgets the way. Some drivers, for example, they say, how did I go to Masjid Nabi? I haven't come here for a while, I forgot. They say, for example, they go to the other masjid, exactly. They go to the wrong address because they forget. That's nisyan. Then there's jahl, which means ignorance. I don't even know. I never even knew how to get to the masjid. I didn't even know the directions. The topic of today is people know, they have knowledge. And many of us today, if you say, do you have knowledge of the hereafter? You say, yes. Do you have knowledge of God exists? Yes. But then we're unmindful, we're not caring. Not even forgetting. Ghafla means that you're careless. You don't care to learn. You don't care to change. You don't want to really care too much about how you live your life. Because maybe in reality it isn't that important for you. Do you forget about something you really like? When you want to purchase something, do you forget about it? For example, it's on sale right now, that item you liked a lot, and there's a sale. Do you forget about it? Usually you don't. When you are in love, do you forget about that person that you love? No. Those things that you really love, there's no way you forget about it. There's no way you be unmindful. That's why people are so upset. You forget the anniversary, for example. You say, how could you forget my anniversary? You don't love me, for example. Because things that you love, you care about, you usually remember. That's just a fact. Well, maybe 1 year you forget, but usually what happens after 10, 20 years you forget. So therefore, when we care about things, you don't forget them. And one of the problems that we have in this society, if you're not careful, is that your heart will be poisoned. Your heart will become corrupted. from all this materialism, from all this ghafla. And then you see that at the end, you don't even care. You don't even want to know. You don't even care to learn anymore. And your heart is a sick heart. And this, if you go outside in society, you see many people, either they're non-Muslim or even Muslim, sometimes they come to this country and they separate themselves from masjids, from scholars. They go to a path that it's a deep ocean. You never know where they end up. So these are the dangers that, brothers and sisters, you have to know. That being in this country, being in this culture, being here, you need to focus. You need to pay attention to your deen. You have to care about your children. And if you just let them go and you're also ghafil of them as well, what's going to happen when you raise them? Sometimes, unfortunately, some people, they send them to Islamic schools. They say, Islamic school, very good, I'll pay. And they expect the Islamic school to do everything for them. No, the parents at the deen should be at home. You should work on them at home. So what are some of the factors of negligence? We talked about some of the few ayahs. I don't want to repeat them. One is that first I would like to start with a tradition from Luqman. Luqman is a prophet, not a prophet. So Luqman is Hakim, and he is quoted. We talked about last week that sometimes in the Holy Qur'an or in traditions from non-infallibles, non-prophets, people are quoted. Luqman is one of them. He's Hakim, surah about him, and some of his statements are recorded. That is how high somebody can raise in rank, how wise someone can come that is not a prophet. Or, for example, we have traditions from Salman. Sometimes Imam Sadiq, and I gave you the tradition last week from Prophet Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, quoted from Salman Farsi. And he's not a prophet. Imam Sadiq is quoting him. Why? Because he says something that's right. Luqman mentions to his son, لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِذُ يَا بُنَيَّ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلَامَةٍ يُعْرَفُ بِهَا وَيُشْهَدُ عَلَيْهَا. He's Hakim, he's wise. He says everything has a sign. If you want to know things, for example, everything has a sign. It says, for example, لِلْغَافِلِ ثَلَاثُ عَلَامَاتٍ. In the tradition, in Al-Khisal, it says that, my son, for the person that has forgotten, the person that is negligent, there are 3 signs. Let's see if this exists in us. Let's see if in the society we live, if it exists. 1. لِلْغَافِلِ ثَلَاثُ عَلَامَاتٍ. First, as-sahw, a person that is absent-minded. 2. Allahu, amusement. How much fun? If you look at the communities, how much are we looking for fun? If you actually look at even some of the signs or things that are important for us to remember, they try to make it a joke because everything in the society today has to be amusing. And they always tell you your lectures, your speeches, try to make it amusing so that we can be amused, so we can have fun while we're learning something, for example. So sometimes I have to put jokes or I say funny comments in my lectures so you can have a good time. You can laugh a little bit. You can be amused. Because if it's not amusing, we don't watch. If you look at a lot of the commercials on TV, which ones are the successful ones, the amusing ones, the funny ones? Right? You like those funny ones, remember, it goes in your mind, and then it has that effect for you. So because we live in a society, and one of the alamat is Allah. Not that having amusement is something bad, but having it all the time, and that's your center of life, just to be amused, just to have fun. There's a big problem with that. As-sahw, absent-mindedness, wa nisyan, and forgetfulness. And this is actually, if you want to say the description of today's society, you'd say these 3 words. Don't you, brothers and sisters, see this? That as-sahw, wallah, wa nisyan, that absent-mindedness, amusement, forgetfulness, it's all that's happening. How much, and I'm talking about myself, how much today did I remember Allah? How much today did I remember God? How much today did I remember death? We had a very tragic event, this week, and it broke the hearts of many people. A mother of 3, mother of a 10-month, had this accident, Sister Zainab Joseph. Very sad for many of us in the community. She passed away. And how fast this can happen. And sometimes people ask, why, Allah? Why do you take her? Why did you do this? As if we were meant just to live in this world, as if we're created that raha and comfort will be in this world. The tradition says if you seek comfort and ease, it's in the hereafter. You're never going to have that 100% peace that you want in this world because it's darul mahlufa bil bala. This is a world that's covered with bala. If you really think of it, how many dangers are there for us here? From the medical, for example, health, from just driving, for example. How many different things can happen to me throughout the day? And Allah has protected me. But yet, I am still ghafil. There's so many dangers. What would happen? Our teacher, Shaykh Ahmad al-Mujtari, all the time would say, right now, imagine, Allah takes your life right away, right now. We mentioned some of the verses of the Qur'an about this. That even if you're in towers, protected towers, you cannot run away from death. What would happen, dear brother, dear sister, right now, tonight is our last day in this world. Are you satisfied? Did you gain enough that you think? Did you say, everything there was in this world? We know Prophet Ibrahim, Qur'an says that he was wafa, that he took, one of the definitions of Prophet Ibrahim is that he took. Wafa here means he took everything there was to gain in this world, he got it. Everything there was, he took it. Or you can say he's very loyal, for example, or whatever there was, tawafi, he took. Have you taken as much as you can from this world for the next? Why is it not, we're not taking? Why are we not focusing? Because we're ghafil. Because we're free. We have knowledge, we have iman. And this is maybe one of the biggest, the most dangerous diseases that exists in our communities that causes us not to progress and to be at the same level year and year again is because we are ghafil. We know it's true, but we just forget about it and we don't act. I'm talking to myself. Imam Hassan alayhi salam also gives a sign of ghafla. And maybe I ask you in your minds right now, how would you know if a person is negligent or not? Imam Hassan alayhi salam mentions, تَرْكُكَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْغَفْلَةُ تَرْكُكَ الْمَسْجِدِ. Negligence is manifest in your abandonment of the masjid, of the mosque. Sometimes we even have programs here. People are outside. They come all the way to the masjid, but with the main program, either Ziyarat Ashura, Qur'an. My speech is not anything, if you want to, fall asleep in it, it's fine. It's good. It's a good lullaby for you. If you want to fall asleep, that's fine. But at least there's some Qur'an and some ziyarat mentioned. We come all the way to masjid, all the way here, but those doors are never open for some. They never come in. All the way. So tarkuk masjid. When you leave the masjid, when you don't pay attention to the masjid, or sometimes maybe you can say, I'm here in the masjid, but my heart is not in the masjid. My mind is not in the masjid. Why? Because the masjid is a place of remembrance. If we're not going to remember Allah here, then where we're going to go remember it when you're at the home, at work. Where else are we going to remember Allah? At least practice remembering Allah in the masjid. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, these are insanul kamil, these are complete human beings. The sign of a negligent one is one who leaves the masjid. Let me ask you this question. Can somebody in this day and age, with so much ghaflat happening, keep their focus while they never come to the masjid? Almost impossible. Almost impossible. Because the masjid gives you mu'adha. Imam Ali says mu'adha and advice gives life to your heart again. It gives this ihya of your heart. That remembrance of God gives you ihya. When brother recites Qur'an, that Qur'an gives life to your heart again. Every factor we're going to mention, what are the factors of being awake again, being alive again, is already in our programs that we have. Sayyid al-Shuhada, crying for Imam Hussein, some of our ulama compare. Now, it's not a very good comparison. I don't like to say it, but there's a marja, Ayatollah Bahjat mentioned it. He mentions about Salatul Layl, which is one of the best things. And then he compares it for crying for Imam Hussein. He says, crying for Imam Hussein for me is higher than Salatul Layl. Crying for Imam, he says, because this is from the heart, because this is tears. Maybe in your Salatul Layl, maybe you don't pay attention, you just do it from habit. But when you cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you recite Ziyarat Ashura, you should have a feeling that I'm alive again, I'm a refresher again. Thank you, alhamdulillah, thank you Imam Hussein for doing tathir of my heart. But yet some, again, we said we don't want to go through the doors of the masjid. Qur'an mentions some of these awamil. Let's mention some of them and not make it too long. The first that I want to say, and I talked about this at the beginning, the main factor of forgetting God and religion and losing focus. And you see many people, in the day of judgment, you'll see them, your friends, your buddies, you say, wow, what a position you had. Why? Because they were working every day. They were working every day and getting close to Allah while we were just busy playing. Deen for us was amusement too. Qur'an mentions, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, la tulhikum amwalakum wa awladakum an dhikrillah. 63:9, if you want to remember. Chapter 63:9. O you who have believed, let not your wealth and your children divert you from the remembrance of Allah. So what is one of the factors of changing or being diverted from remembrance? Children, money, wealth. But actually, if you think about it, this should cause you more remembrance. How does your wealth cause you more remembrance? When you thank Allah and you spend it in the right way. You don't spend it, as I said, 300,000 items. You don't have those 300,000. Maybe you have 250,000 items, and 50,000 of them you remember some starving people in Gaza and Palestine. You remember some in the US right now. This year we gave 15 families, Shia families, Zakatul, this was last year, Zakatul Fitr. 15 families. There are poor families here. They need help. We have to find them. You can't just say, you can't expect them just to knock at your door. We have to go and find them, see what we can do to them, not be ghafal of them. That is a person whose wealth is not remembrance. Look at the wealth of Lady Khadija, for example. The wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let's get from ghafla. Let's wake up a little bit. Muhammad wa'ajil farj. She spent all her money for Rasulullah. Her money was halal. Because Rasulullah was not, some people here make a mistake. They say our Prophet was employed by Lady Khadija. We say the prophets have so much high position that they cannot be employed by anyone. We say this was mudaraba, meaning he was an agent. He was a business partner. Because mudaraba means this, the wealth comes, capital comes from one person, and the business buying and selling comes from another person. The other one does the work, goes and finds, does the trade, but does it with the capital of someone else. So they're not employed. They say like 20-80, 70-30. There needs to be a percentage me, percentage you. Now a question, would our Prophet choose anyone to do this business transaction with, to be, for example, partnership with? Her money must have been halal. Her business must have been halal for him to do this. So you see, a lady at that time of Arabia had wealth. They say she had maybe hundreds, maybe 1,000 camels of trading throughout the region. One of the largest homes in Mecca. Population of Mecca, some of it, they would fit in it, if not all of it, in her large house. She was one of the richest in Arabia. But this didn't make her forget Allah. She never forgot Allah. And actually so many suitors she had, so many people would say, marry me, because of her wealth. And that she married an orphan at that time. She married someone that did not have that wealth, but he was Sadiq al-Amin. So she did not allow her wealth to corrupt her, to forget Allah. Or banin, children, awlad. Sometimes people, they are good, but that child takes their parents down with them. And the child says, no, daddy. They're very religious parents. The dad says, no, daddy, mommy, I want to do this for my birthday. It says, haram. You can't have a DJ, for example, on your birthday. I need it. I want it, for example. Bring me the DJ, for example, or whatever. Have a mixed gathering, everyone dancing. It's my birthday. It's okay. No, this is haram. I don't want to do this. And they keep bringing the kids down. And they keep bringing the parents lower and lower and lower. So this is a reality. Instead, that child could be baqiyat salihat. That child, if learning Qur'an, training them, spending time with them. Of course, guidance is up to Allah, at least doing our responsibility, because remember, at the end, that guidance is up to Allah. Even, sometimes we have children from some of the imams that we don't necessarily have much, hadith about their good behavior, for example. It can be in a way that some have children, they're not good. I remember one of my friends, he says that I had two sisters. He's a scholar. He says, I have two sisters from the same mother, father and mother. He says, one of them is a very good person. The other sister is a very bad person. Two parents. So that sometimes it just happens. But the awlad should not take you from the remembrance of God. The awlad should be a capital for you. That wealth should cause you to enter heaven. The child should cause you to enter heaven. So one of the first awamil or factors of ghafla is paying too much attention to this material world. And that's just what happens. You pay too much attention to it. The homes I have, the cars I drive. I need to have this standard of life. All of this is good. If you remember Allah, very good. It's good to have a big house. It's good to have, for example, a good car. All of that is good. But as long as it doesn't cause you to be attached and focused on that. Two, we'll say, the nafs, the Hawaii nafs. Qur'an mentions Surah Al-Kahf, verse 28. Surah Al-Kahf, verse 28. وَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا. So Qur'an says, do not obey one whose heart we have made heedless of remembrance. If you think of this verse, before I say this point, Qur'an says, don't follow those people that are ghafil. Meaning that when they're unmindful of God, you will be able to see it in their lives. Can you show me examples of people, individuals that are ghafil? Yes, very obvious. You can see how the way they talk, the way they walk, what they eat, how they act. Because being unmindful is very clear. So Qur'an says, first of all, do not be like those people. And then it says, they had the ghafla, heedless of our remembrance, and who follows his desire. وَأَتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ. And they followed their desires. Whatever they wanted, they got. Whatever they wanted, because the second factor of ghafla, negligence, is having a heart that you cannot, desires that you cannot control anymore. Doing whatever you want, saying whatever you want, making up rumors, whatever you want, not caring what happens if this is not true, for example. Backbiting whoever you want, whenever you want. Talking whenever you want. Looking at whatever you want. Eating whatever food you want, for example. This is Hawaii nafs. And the only people that were successful in being mindful are people that put their foot down on their nafs and say, enough is enough. I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to follow you. And those are the people that they always choose Allah over themselves. The last thing that I would like to say about one of the factors is taking religious knowledge superficially. Taking the instructions that we have from Qur'an and prophets to not be that important. Not studying it, not going to class about it, not verifying it, not spending time over and going through the books. I have seen even some, they're very pious individuals. They weren't scholars or ulama, but they would read all the time. And if you ask them about verses of Qur'an, they would know. If you ask them about hadith, these people that have very high levels of piety, they weren't scholars, Whenever you would meet them, they would share a hadith with you. They would give you knowledge. I gave this example before. One of my friends said, and you can, those that were in the city of, for example, Tehran, you can ask. They were raised. One of my friends, and actually one of my family members, that their generations and generations, they live in Tehran. I said the religious community in Tehran would ask, they said, would you want the tea first or would you want the hadith first? Which one do you want? The chai first or the hadith? That's how the mu'mineen live their lives. Do you want tea first? Today it's no. When you come in, it's usually not even tea. It's either cappuccino or frappuccino or something. And there's no hadith. It's usually the hadith of the news. Hadith of, for example, what happened with the stock market, what to invest in, how to get more money. No hadith, قال الباقر قال الصادق عليه السلام. Ask right now, how many hadith do you know from the imams? How many hadith have we studied? Now, how many of them has impacted your life? But yet, one hadith from Imam Baqir mentions, one hadith is better than the dunya wa ma fiha. One hadith is better than the entire world. So therefore, taking our religious knowledge lightly and not spending time for it. Having time for it to learn languages is good. To learn, different arts and crafts are good. But what happens to your deen? You don't have time for that, but you've mastered, mashallah, so many other things. I don't want to take too much time. Let's see. By salawat ala Muhammad wa you can answer. Muhammad wa Do you want to go over the solution now, or we'll leave it for next week? Is that enough? I think maybe you could just talk about the factors. Next week, we'll talk about some of the solutions. Now, what can we do? What does Qur'an say to do? I'll just say one of them. One of the things that Qur'an mentions to do is that Qur'an itself identifies itself as a reminder. Qur'an itself says if you want to be reminded, because Qur'an says, Kalla innahu tadhkira. Qur'an is a tadhkira. Qur'an is a reminder. And it says, فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَ. Then whoever wills will remember it. This is what's in Mudathir, Surah Al-Mudathir, verse 54, 55. Qur'an itself is a tadhkur, or Qur'an itself is a tadhkira. Meaning that a person that lives their life reciting the Holy Qur'an, there's no way they can forget about God, forget about the hereafter, forget about themselves. So one of the solutions that we have is reading Qur'an, pondering about Qur'an, thinking about Qur'an, and keeping those verses of Qur'an alive. Because everything you need to know for you to be successful in life is in the Qur'an and in the bayan and explanation of the Qur'an. May Allah, inshallah, make us not of the ghafileen, inshallah. May every day of our life, may Allah, inshallah, wake us up before we wake up by death. Because when we wake up by death, we'll be awake, but it'll be too late. May Allah wake us up before death comes, inshallah, to us. May Allah make us of those that do not neglect the Imam of the age. May Allah make us of those that do not neglect the Imams and the shrines of the Imams. Like those that were destroyed over 100 years ago in Baqi, in the 8th of Shawwal. May Allah make us one day see that the shrines of Ahlul Bayt in Baqi be, inshallah, reconstructed one day. Allah forgive all of our marhumeen. Don't make us ghafil of our parents. Don't make us ghafil of those that have passed away, our parents, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers. Allah give cure to all the sick. Allah relieve the oppression of all of those that are oppressed. Don't make us ghafil of the oppressed, inshallah. And make us die with iman and taqwa and sa'adat and happiness with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.